Ethan Cole had always been curious about the stars. As a human engineer, he spent his days fixing machines, designing gadgets, and thinking about what lay beyond Earth. When the chance came to join an interstellar exploration mission, he did not hesitate. He was excited to see new worlds, meet new life forms, and experience something no human had ever seen. The team's ship, the Starseeker, entered the Xylarian star system after weeks of travel. The Xylarian Empire was known across nearby galaxies for its beauty, advanced technology, and strict social rules. No human had ever been invited to their inner cities, so the mission was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. The planet they landed on was a vivid green jewel, with forests that shimmered under twin suns. Rivers flowed with crystal-clear water, and mountains stretched high into the sky. Ethan could not help but feel a sense of awe as he walked across the landing platform. Everything was different here. Even the air felt cleaner, fresher, somehow sharper than Earth's. "Remember," said Captain Lorna, "we are guests. Respect their customs. Observe, do not interfere, and stay with your assigned guides." Ethan nodded, though his stomach fluttered. As much as he was prepared for technical challenges, he had no idea what he would face in the realm of alien etiquette. Soon, they were escorted into a city unlike any human had ever seen. Towers spiraled upward, glowing faintly with colors that shifted like sunlight on water. Bridges connected the towers in sweeping arcs. Floating vehicles zipped silently through the sky. It was beautiful, but also intimidating. At the center of the city stood a palace carved from a single crystal-like structure. Its surface reflected everything around it, making it seem almost invisible at certain angles. It was here that the humans were to meet Queen Lysera, the ruler of Xylaria. Inside the palace, everything was larger than life. The ceiling stretched high above, with hanging gardens floating in midair. Strange machines hummed softly, and the walls glowed with information Ethan could not begin to understand. Xylarian guards, tall and graceful, moved silently through the corridors. Finally, they reached a grand hall. At the far end, a figure sat on a throne that seemed grown from living crystal. Queen Lysera rose as they approached. She was tall, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver and eyes that glowed softly blue. Every movement was precise, elegant, and commanding. Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. He had never seen anyone like her. "Welcome, humans," her voice echoed through the hall. Soft but firm. "You honor Xylaria with your presence." Ethan stepped forward, trying to appear confident. "Thank you, Your Majesty. It is an honor to visit your world." Lysera studied him with a faint smile. "You are different from what I expected." Before Ethan could respond, a Xylarian counselor stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the ritual must begin. The humans are participating, whether they realize it or not." Ethan frowned. "Ritual?" he whispered to Captain Lorna. She shrugged. The counselor gestured to a crystal pedestal. "Stand here, human. This is your place in the ceremony." Ethan hesitated. He was nervous, but he did not want to offend. He stepped forward, trying to follow what he thought were the correct movements. He bowed slightly, then placed his hand on the pedestal. A soft hum filled the room. Light swirled around Ethan, warm and strange. He felt a gentle pressure, like invisible hands guiding him. Queen Lysera extended her hand toward him, and the hum grew stronger. Then a voice echoed in his mind, not loud but clear. "You are now bonded to Xylaria." Ethan froze. Bonded? What did that mean? He opened his mouth to speak, but the counselor's voice cut in. "It is done. The human is now the consort of the queen." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Consort? Wait, I didn't..." But it was too late. The court erupted in polite applause. Queen Lysera's smile widened, faint amusement in her glowing eyes. Ethan felt his face heat up. He had not planned on marrying an alien queen. Not today. Not ever. Captain Lorna stepped forward, trying to intervene. "Your Majesty, this was unnecessary," Lysera said calmly. "The ritual was observed correctly. The bond is real." "There is no reversal." Ethan's knees felt weak. He glanced at his teammates, who looked just as shocked. This was a diplomatic mission, not a wedding. Yet here he was, standing in the palace of an alien empire, officially bound to its ruler. "Ethan," Lysera said softly, stepping closer. "Do not be afraid. You have nothing to fear here. You are safe, for now." Ethan nodded, though he was still confused. "Safe, right?" The counselors whispered among themselves, and Ethan noticed some glanced at him with suspicion, others with curiosity. He realized quickly that his every movement would now be watched and judged. The Queen led him to a side chamber, a place filled with soft light and soothing sounds. It was meant for reflection and adjustment after the ritual. Ethan sank into a chair, trying to process what had just happened. "Do you understand what this bond means?" Lysira asked. I think so," Ethan stammered. "But I didn't plan for this. I'm just an engineer." Lysira smiled gently. "Humans are interesting. Sometimes your simplicity reveals truths others overlook. Perhaps this will work in your favor." Ethan frowned. "I hope so." "I really do." She studied him for a moment, then stood. "You will need to learn our ways. There is more to being a consort than simply standing by my side. You must understand Xylarian culture, politics, and responsibilities." Ethan swallowed hard. "I can try. I'll do my best." Lysira's expression softened. "That is all I ask. For now." Over the next few hours, Ethan was guided through the palace. He learned the basic rules: how to address the Queen, how to move through certain halls, and how to behave around the council. Every step felt strange. Every glance from the Xylarian guards felt like a test. But he kept reminding himself, he was a human. Humans adapted. Humans survived. By the evening, Ethan was exhausted. His head spun with new terms, rituals, and ideas. Yet somewhere deep inside, he felt a spark of excitement. He had landed in a situation no human had ever faced. And though it terrified him, he could not help but be curious. What would come next? Lysira returned to check on him. She found him staring out at the city below, lost in thought. "You are thinking too much," she said, a faint laugh in her voice. "Humans think too much, yet do not act enough. Perhaps I can teach you both." Ethan looked at her, unsure whether to feel relieved or more nervous. I would like that. I want to learn," she inclined her head. "Then you will begin tomorrow. There are lessons to be learned. And dangers to avoid. This empire has many secrets, and now you are a part of it." Ethan nodded, feeling both excitement and dread. He realized that what started as an accidental ritual had changed his life forever. He was no longer just a human engineer. He was now the consort to an alien queen, walking into a world of unknown challenges, politics, and mysteries. As he lay down to rest that night, Ethan thought about the stars outside his window. They had once been a symbol of adventure. Now they were a reminder that his life had taken a turn no human could have imagined. He closed his eyes, preparing for a journey that would test him in ways he could not yet understand. But he also knew one thing for certain: humans were not easily broken. And he, Ethan Cole, would find a way to survive, adapt, and maybe even thrive in the heart of the Xylarian Empire. The morning sunlight filtered through the crystal walls of the Xylarian palace, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. Ethan Cole awoke with a mix of dread and curiosity. Today, his training as the Queen's consort would begin. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew one thing: humans could adapt. A soft chime announced the start of the day. A Xylarian guide appeared at his door. She was graceful, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to shimmer like stars. "Good morning, Ethan," she said in a musical tone. "Queen Lysira awaits. Today you begin your lessons in Xylarian customs and duties." Ethan rubbed his eyes. I hope I don't mess up," she smiled faintly. "Mistakes are part of learning. Just follow instructions and observe carefully." In the main hall, Queen Lysira stood waiting. Her presence was commanding, yet there was a hint of amusement in her glowing eyes. She gestured for Ethan to approach. "Today you begin understanding Xylarian communication," she said. "It is more than words. You must read gestures, intentions, and energy." Ethan frowned. "Energy?" Lysira nodded. "Every Xylarian expresses thoughts through subtle shifts in their aura. Humans have not evolved this way, but you may learn." The first lesson was exhausting. Ethan tried to mimic the gestures and energy shifts Lysira demonstrated, but he often overdid it or missed key nuances. The Queen's expression remained calm, but her advisors whispered among themselves. Ethan felt like every mistake was being recorded. Yet amid the challenge, Ethan noticed something remarkable. Despite his awkwardness, his human approach, direct and honest, sometimes succeeded where subtlety failed. On one exercise, Lysira asked him to mediate a disagreement between two advisors. Ethan listened, asked questions, and offered simple but practical solutions. The Xylarian advisors, used to complex negotiation, were taken aback by his clarity. Lysira's eyes glowed faintly blue, a sign of approval. "Interesting," she murmured. "Humans, They do not complicate what should be simple. Ethan blinked. I'm glad it helped. The lessons continued throughout the day. Ethan learned about Xylarian etiquette, how to bow, when to speak, and which gestures showed respect. He also learned about the Empire's history, its alliances, and its enemies. Though it was overwhelming, he tried to absorb everything. By mid-afternoon, Ethan was exhausted. His head was full of new words, customs, and ways of thinking. Yet he felt a spark of confidence. For the first time, he realized that humans had a unique strength, adaptability. He could survive here if he kept thinking clearly. During a break, Ethan walked through the palace gardens with Lysera. The gardens floated in mid-air, filled with colorful plants that glowed softly. Streams of water curved through the air as if defying gravity. It was peaceful, a sharp contrast to the intensity of the lessons. "You seem tired," Lysera said, her voice calm. "I am," Ethan admitted. "This is a lot to take in." "You humans are resilient," she observed. "You adjust quickly even when everything is unfamiliar." "I admire that." Ethan felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. "Thank you." "Your Majesty." Lysera looked at him for a long moment. "Do not call me that all the time. We are bonded now. You may call me Lysera if you wish." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Lysera?" "Okay." They walked in silence for a few moments, listening to the gentle hum of the floating gardens. Ethan realized that despite the strangeness of his situation, he was beginning to understand the Queen. And she seemed curious about him too. The afternoon brought a new challenge. Lysera led him to a chamber filled with machines and tools unlike any Ethan had seen. The palace's energy systems were vast and complex, controlled by technology that seemed to think almost like a living being. "Today, you will assist with the palace's energy regulation," Lysera said. "Some humans are engineers. Perhaps your skills will be useful." Ethan's eyes lit up. Finally, something he understood. He stepped forward and examined the controls. The systems were intricate, but the principles were not entirely alien. He quickly identified a minor instability in the energy flow. "Here," he said, pointing. "This junction is overloaded. If we adjust the flow slightly, it should stabilize the system." Lysera observed him silently, her glowing eyes curious. Ethan adjusted the settings, his hands moving with precision. Slowly, the hum of the machine smoothed out. The lights in the chamber steadied, and the energy field above glowed evenly. The Queen's lips curved into a faint smile. "Impressive. Your human logic works where Xylarian complexity fails." Ethan felt a surge of pride. "I just try to think clearly." The lesson was not without tension. A few council members watched with suspicion. One muttered, "A human interfering in palace systems. Daring." Ethan caught the remark and felt a flicker of worry. He realized that while some admired him, others resented his presence. The evening brought another test. Lysera invited Ethan to a formal dinner with the council. The room was vast, filled with long tables and hovering dishes of exotic food. The council members were all dressed in ceremonial attire, and their gazes followed Ethan closely. "You must navigate this dinner carefully," Lysera whispered. "Your words, gestures, and even your eating habits are being observed." Ethan swallowed hard. Noted. Throughout the dinner, he listened more than he spoke. When asked a question about his human culture, he answered honestly, describing Earth and human inventions. Surprisingly, some council members leaned in, fascinated by his perspective. Others remained silent, their expressions guarded. Halfway through the meal, a heated discussion broke out between two council members. Ethan remembered the earlier lesson about mediation. He took a deep breath and suggested a simple compromise, explaining his reasoning clearly and calmly. The room fell silent. Then, to his surprise, the councilors nodded. The Queen's eyes glowed softly with approval. Ethan realized that even a human with no political training could make a difference with logic and honesty. After dinner, Lysera led him back to his quarters. "You performed well today," she said. "Not only did you learn, but you contributed. That is rare for someone so new." Ethan felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Thank you, Lysera. I just want to do my best." "You already have," she said. "But remember, challenges will grow. Some will test you in ways you do not expect." Ethan nodded. He knew she was right. The palace was beautiful, but beauty often hid danger. He was a human in an alien empire, and every step required careful thought. That night, Ethan lay in bed thinking about the day. He had made mistakes, yet he had also succeeded. He realized that humans had a unique gift, the ability to adapt to solve problems in ways others could not. And perhaps that gift could help him survive here, not just as a consort, but as someone who could earn respect. As he drifted to sleep, Ethan could hear the soft hum of the palace around him. It was strange, alien, and beautiful. He thought of the days ahead, full of lessons, tests, and challenges. He also thought of Lysera, the queen who had bound him to her through a ritual he barely understood. For the first time since the ceremony, Ethan felt a sense of possibility. He did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing: humans were survivors, and he, Ethan Cole, would find a way to thrive in this new world. Even if it meant learning alien ways, navigating court politics, and facing dangers he could not yet imagine, he was ready to begin. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight he allowed himself a small sense of accomplishment. He was no longer just a visitor on Xylaria. He was part of it, however accidental that might have been. And somewhere deep in the palace, Queen Lysera watched, quietly curious about the human who had already begun to surprise her. The palace of Xylaria was magnificent, but it hid dangers Ethan Cole had not yet fully understood. Though he had begun learning the ways of the Xylarian people and earned the queen's cautious respect, not all in the court were pleased by a human's sudden presence at the heart of power. Ethan awoke to soft light spilling through the crystal walls, his mind buzzing with the lessons of the previous days. Today, he knew, would be more challenging. The queen herself had promised new responsibilities, tests of logic, strategy, and diplomacy that would stretch his human abilities. His guide, the pale blue-skinned Xylarian, waited outside his quarters. "Good morning, Ethan. The queen awaits. She has planned a series of exercises that will test your judgment and your ability to act under pressure." Ethan sighed. Judgment under pressure. "I hope humans are allowed mistakes." The guide tilted her head, a faint smile forming. "Mistakes are instructive, but some mistakes can have consequences. Choose carefully." At the main hall, Queen Lysera was already waiting, seated with calm elegance. Her glowing blue eyes met his as he entered. "Today you will meet the council formally. You will present solutions to challenges they have prepared. Do not underestimate them. They are experienced leaders and some do not trust you." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had solved energy problems and mediated minor disputes before, but now, this was something entirely different. He was being tested by people who had lived in the Empire for centuries. The council chamber was enormous, filled with Xylarian advisors and officials. Each had a distinct aura that Ethan struggled to interpret. He noticed immediately that some counselors watched him with curiosity, while others displayed thinly veiled suspicion. A counselor with deep violet skin stood first. "Human," he said, his voice formal, "we have heard much about your skills. Today, you will assist with a strategic problem regarding our outer colonies. If you fail, the consequences may be significant." Ethan nodded. "I understand. I'll do my best." The problem involved a small colony on the edge of Xylarian space where resources had begun to dwindle and tensions with a neighboring alien faction were rising. Xylarian methods had failed to provide a solution, and now they were asking a human for advice. Ethan took a deep breath. He remembered what Lysera had said. Humans see things differently. Perhaps his perspective, grounded in practical logic, could help. He outlined a plan using human principles of resource management, communication, and negotiation. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly. The counselors exchanged glances. Some frowned, considering his suggestions carefully. Others whispered among themselves. Finally, a counselor with gold-patterned skin nodded. "This is unconventional, yet it may succeed where traditional methods failed." Queen Lysera's eyes glowed softly. "Well done, Ethan. Your logic is clear. Humans think in ways we often overlook." Ethan exhaled, relief mixing with pride. Perhaps he could survive here after all. But the calm did not last. Later, while walking through the palace corridors, Ethan overheard a whisper from two counselors who had previously shown suspicion. "Humans cannot be trusted," one hissed. "They disrupt traditions. If she relies on him too much, the Empire may suffer." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had expected resistance, but hearing it confirmed made it real. He realized that while Lysera supported him, he could not rely solely on her protection. He needed allies. Over the next few days, Ethan quietly observed the palace staff, looking for those who were loyal to the queen and open to cooperation. He discovered a small group of officers and advisors who respected Lysera and were curious about his perspective. With their guidance, he began learning the subtle signs of loyalty and deceit, a skill humans did not need often on Earth but would be crucial here. One evening, Lysera summoned him to a secluded chamber. "Ethan," she said, "there are forces in this court that do not wish you well. I trust you can navigate the politics, but you must be cautious." Ethan nodded. "I will. I think I am starting to understand how to read people here. Humans are good at observing patterns and predicting behavior." Lysera studied him for a long moment. "Yes, and that may be what keeps us safe. But remember, underestimating Xylarian cunning can be fatal." Before he could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the palace. Red lights flashed as a security system alerted the staff to a breach in one of the outer chambers. Ethan and Lysera rushed to the scene with a group of loyal officers. The chamber was the energy control hub, where vital systems for the palace and surrounding city were monitored. A team of saboteurs, disguised as maintenance workers, had attempted to tamper with the system. If they had succeeded, it could have caused a blackout and exposed the palace to a possible attack. Ethan's mind raced. Using his human understanding of systems and logic, he quickly assessed the situation. "Cut power to this node first," he instructed. "Then reroute the main circuit here to stabilize the system." The Xylarian officers hesitated, unfamiliar with his rapid decisions. But Lysera's gaze was calm, trusting him. "Do as he says," she ordered. Working together, they managed to contain the sabotage. The saboteurs were captured, and the palace systems remained secure. Ethan felt a surge of relief and adrenaline. He had acted quickly, relying on his instincts and engineering knowledge, and it had worked. Lysera placed a hand on his shoulder. "You performed well," she said. "Not only did you protect the palace, but you also proved that your presence can be valuable. Some counselors may begin to see that now." Ethan nodded, still catching his breath. I just reacted. Humans are trained to think fast under pressure." She smiled faintly. "And that is why you survive where others might hesitate." The days that followed were a mixture of lessons, minor challenges, and careful observation. Ethan continued learning Xylarian customs while quietly strengthening alliances with those who were loyal to the Queen. He also began sharing human ideas about strategy, technology, and problem-solving, surprising some advisors who had doubted him. Through it all, his bond with Lysera grew. She asked his opinion on decisions, listened to his reasoning, and sometimes simply allowed him to observe, letting him understand the court from the inside. For Ethan, it was a delicate balance, being human in a world that seemed so alien, yet finding a place where his strengths mattered. One evening, Lysera took him to the floating gardens again. The twin suns of Xylaria were setting, casting golden light across the plants and streams. "You are changing the way this court thinks," she said softly. "Humans are unusual. You are different from anyone I have met, yet I am learning from you as well." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. "I never expected to be here or to be part of this world," he admitted. "But I want to help. I want to be useful, not just a guest who got lucky." "You are more than that," she replied. "Your presence challenges tradition, yes, but it also brings clarity. Remember, humans adapt. That is your greatest strength." Ethan smiled faintly. "I will remember, and I will try my best." The night was quiet as they walked through the gardens, and Ethan realized that despite the danger, he felt a growing sense of purpose. He was learning to survive not just as a human, but as someone who could make a difference in this alien empire. But he also knew that the court's politics were far from simple. There were enemies, and some were closer than he realized. He would need to rely on his wits, his human instincts, and the alliances he was building if he hoped to protect Lysera and himself. As he returned to his quarters that night, Ethan thought about the palace and the strange, beautiful world around him. He had faced challenges he could never have imagined, yet he had survived. He had made mistakes, but he had also proven his worth. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more lessons, and perhaps more danger. But for the first time, Ethan felt a quiet confidence. Humans had survived in the harshest environments on Earth. Why not here, in a palace of crystal and light, under the watchful eyes of an alien queen? And somewhere deep within the palace, Queen Lysera watched silently, curious and cautious, wondering just how far this human could go, and whether he could change the future of Xylaria forever. The morning air in the Xylarian palace carried an unusual tension. Ethan Cole awoke to a palace buzzing with activity, alarms echoing faintly through the crystal walls. The council chambers had convened urgently overnight. A neighboring alien empire, the Dravari, had sent warships to Xylaria's borders, exploiting what they believed was the empire's weakness, a human consort in the palace. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. He had learned to navigate court politics, but now he was facing something far more dangerous, a real threat to the empire and to Queen Lysera herself. The queen summoned him immediately. Her eyes glowed brighter than usual, a sign of her heightened focus. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but firm, "the Dravari believe we are weak. Your insight may be the key to turning the tide. Will you help?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I'll do whatever I can. Humans, we're good at finding solutions when others can't." Lysera inclined her head. "Then prepare yourself. We leave for the command center immediately." The command center was a marvel. Screens floated in midair, showing star maps, ship movements, and energy fields. Advisors moved quickly, relaying information to the Queen. Ethan could see the panic in some faces, the uncertainty in others. Humans may not have faced interstellar threats before, but Ethan knew one thing. Clear thinking could make the difference between victory and disaster. Lysera guided him to a central console. "Ethan, we need a strategy. Our defenses are strong, but the Dravari are cunning and numerous. How do we protect Xylaria without unnecessary loss?" Ethan studied the star maps. He noticed patterns in the Dravari fleet movements. "They're advancing in predictable clusters," he said. "If we can anticipate their path, we can set traps using the palace's energy fields. Redirect energy bursts to create obstacles in space. Their ships will be forced into slower formations, giving our fleet an advantage." The Xylarian officers exchanged skeptical glances. Energy fields were volatile. Any miscalculation could backfire. Ethan noticed their hesitation. "Trust me," he said. "We just need to reroute energy strategically, not all at once. Human logic favors simple, decisive steps. Complex maneuvers may confuse them. And us." Lysera observed silently, her eyes calm. "Proceed. We will follow your lead." For hours, Ethan coordinated with the officers, explaining his plan clearly and calmly. They rerouted energy fields around the capital, created decoy signals to confuse the Dravari, and reinforced key points in the Empire's defense network. Every step required precision, and Ethan's human instincts for problem-solving proved invaluable. By the time the Dravari fleet arrived near Xylaria, the defenses were ready. When the first wave entered the manipulated energy fields, their ships were slowed, caught in magnetic eddies, and redirected by invisible barriers. The Dravari commanders were caught off guard, and confusion spread quickly through their ranks. Ethan monitored the situation, giving instructions with clarity and calmness. "Shift the left barrier 2 degrees. Activate the secondary decoy signal. Keep their path predictable but constrained." The Xylarian fleet, trained for precision but sometimes overthinking, followed his commands, slowly. The Dravari ships were funneled into zones where the Xylarian ships could strike efficiently. One by one, the enemy ships were disabled or forced to retreat. Lysera stood behind him, watching intently. "Your strategies, they are working. Humans think differently, yet effectively." Ethan felt a surge of pride but kept his focus. It's all about patterns. Predictable movements can be controlled. Chaos can be managed if you understand the flow. By evening, the Dravari were retreating. Their commanders had underestimated Xylaria, and the human consort had played a crucial role in turning the battle. The palace erupted in relief and celebration, though Ethan remained quiet, processing what had just occurred. Queen Lysera approached him, her expression unreadable for a moment before softening. "You have done more than survive, Ethan. You have defended my empire and proven that humans are capable of remarkable insight." Ethan shook his head slightly. "I just applied logic and observation. Humans have always relied on understanding the environment and acting fast. It worked this time." She smiled faintly. "It worked because you were willing to think differently, to trust your instincts while respecting our systems. That is rare." Despite the victory, Ethan could sense unease. Some counselors who had already been suspicious of him now looked at him with grudging respect or perhaps jealousy. He realized that his presence in the court would never be without tension. Some would admire him, while others would resent him no matter how effective he was. Over the next few days, Ethan assisted with repairs and improvements to the palace's defenses. He introduced small human-inspired innovations, simplified protocols for energy distribution, faster ways to coordinate fleet responses, and practical solutions for communication between distant colonies. Each idea surprised the Xylarian officers, who were used to more complex methods. Lysera observed quietly, sometimes challenging him, sometimes letting him experiment. Their interactions had become familiar, comfortable, and yet charged with a subtle tension neither fully understood. Ethan began to appreciate not just her intelligence but her curiosity. She was as interested in learning from him as he was in learning from her. One evening, Lysera called him to the gardens again. The twin suns were setting, casting long golden shadows across floating streams and luminous plants. "You have changed the way this court thinks," she said softly. "Humans are unusual. Your presence challenges tradition, yet your contributions are undeniable. Some counselors will never fully accept it, but many are beginning to see your value." Ethan nodded, thinking of the days of tests, sabotage, and strategy. "I just try to see things clearly. Humans survive by adapting, learning, and acting when necessary. I think maybe that helps here too." Lysera's gaze softened. "It does. And I am learning from you, Ethan. Humans see solutions differently. Sometimes simpler, sometimes better." Ethan felt a mix of pride and warmth. "I'm glad. I want to help, not just survive." Lysera's smile deepened faintly. "And you are helping more than you realize. But remember, the Drevery will return someday. You have won today, but the galaxy is vast and threats are always near." Ethan's mind raced. He understood the stakes. Humans may have survived on Earth, but Xylaria was an entirely different environment. Every action, every decision could carry consequences far beyond his understanding. Yet he felt ready. If humans could survive storms, disasters, and conflicts on their home planet, perhaps they could survive and even thrive among the stars. The palace was quiet that night, the floating gardens glowing softly in the dark. Ethan sat alone for a while, reflecting on everything that had happened. He had faced political intrigue, sabotage, and now interstellar war. Yet he had endured. He had used human ingenuity, logic, and courage to make a difference. Somewhere in the palace, Queen Lysera watched from a distance, her thoughts unreadable. She had observed him through every trial, every challenge, and every victory. Ethan had proven that humans were not weak or foolish, as some counselors believed. He had demonstrated resilience, intelligence, and bravery, qualities that even she respected deeply. Ethan finally allowed himself a small sense of accomplishment. He had survived. He had helped defend an alien empire. He had earned the Queen's trust and begun to earn the respect of her advisors. But he also knew that the future would bring new challenges, more enemies, more tests, and more responsibility. The galaxy was full of unknown dangers, and as a human consort in an alien empire, he could expect nothing less than constant trials. Yet, for the first time, Ethan felt a quiet confidence. Humans adapted, humans survived. Humans found solutions when others could not. And now in the heart of Xylaria, he was beginning to prove that the human spirit could thrive anywhere, even among the stars. Tomorrow would bring new lessons and new challenges, but tonight, Ethan Cole allowed himself to feel something he had not before, a sense of purpose and belonging in a place he had never imagined he would call home. And somewhere in the palace, Queen Lysera watched him with quiet curiosity, wondering just how far this human could go, and whether he could change the future of Xylaria forever. The morning sun of Xylaria rose over the crystal towers, bathing the palace in a warm golden glow. Ethan Cole awoke with a sense of purpose that had grown steadily over the past weeks. He had learned the customs, faced threats, and proven his value to Queen Lysera and the Empire. But he knew that today would be another test, not of skill but of leadership. A messenger arrived with an urgent summons. Reports had come from the outer colonies. A neighboring faction, previously thought neutral, was testing Xylarian defenses. They sent small fleets near critical supply routes, attempting to provoke a response. Ethan joined Queen Lysera and her advisors in the command chamber. The room hummed with activity, lights displaying the positions of ships and energy flows across Xylaria's borders. "Ethan," Lysera said, her voice calm, "we cannot ignore this. Your insight has proven invaluable before. What do you suggest? Ethan studied the star maps carefully. We need a two-part strategy. First, strengthen the defenses along the supply routes without alerting the enemy. Second, we should create a visible but controlled display of our fleet to deter further attacks. It's not just about force. It's about perception. If they believe we are prepared, they may withdraw without battle. A few counselors exchanged doubtful looks, but Lysera nodded. Proceed. I trust your judgment. Ethan quickly coordinated with the officers loyal to the Queen. He assigned positions, adjusted patrols, and implemented a mix of human strategy with Xylarian technology. The plan was elegant in its simplicity, something humans excelled at, and it worked efficiently. By mid-afternoon, the enemy fleet approached. They expected weakness, but what they saw was the opposite, a well-prepared, precise, and confident defense. The outer fleets maneuvered with coordination that puzzled the attackers. Energy fields created controlled obstacles, and decoy signals misled enemy sensors. The display of preparedness alone caused hesitation. Ethan monitored everything, making small adjustments to maintain balance. He realized that humans often succeeded by being flexible, by observing patterns and acting decisively. This advantage was now saving Xylaria without the need for a full-scale battle. The enemy withdrew slowly, realizing that further aggression would be costly. Ethan let out a quiet breath of relief. He had applied human ingenuity to save lives and preserve peace. The council, watching the events unfold, began to murmur in appreciation. Later, Lysera invited him to the palace gardens. The twin suns were setting, casting long, warm shadows over the floating streams and luminous plants. The gardens had become a place of reflection for Ethan, a space where he could think clearly amidst the demands of the palace. You have done well, Ethan, Lysera said softly. You did not just survive, you led. You showed the value of human insight in a way that none could ignore. Ethan smiled faintly. I just did what humans have always done, adapted and acted when necessary. I'm glad it worked. She studied him, her eyes glowing softly. Your courage, intelligence, and perspective have changed this empire. Some will never fully accept it, but others will remember it for generations. Ethan felt a mix of pride and humility. He had come to Xylaria as an engineer, unsure and nervous, accidentally bound by a ritual he barely understood. Now he was recognized not just as a consort, but as a trusted advisor and protector of the empire. Lysera, he said quietly, I never expected any of this. I didn't plan to marry a queen, or to be part of a world so different from Earth, but I am grateful for the chance to help, to make a difference. Lysera smiled faintly, stepping closer. Sometimes the universe chooses paths we do not expect. What began as an accident has become a partnership. I trust you, Ethan, and I am glad you are here. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. Their bond had grown beyond a ritual. It was mutual respect, understanding, and something deeper that neither had fully named yet. He realized that while his journey had been accidental, it had become meaningful. Over the following weeks, Ethan continued to integrate human ideas with Xylarian systems. He simplified protocols, improved communication, and offered practical solutions to old problems. The council, which had once been skeptical or outright hostile, began to acknowledge the value of his perspective. Even those who had doubted him could not deny that the human consort had made a difference. Ethan also began learning more about Lysera, not just as a queen, but as an individual. She was intelligent, courageous, and curious. She had a vision for her empire, one that valued innovation and collaboration. Ethan admired her dedication and strength, and in quiet moments, he found himself drawn to her in ways he had never imagined. One evening, as the palace prepared for a formal celebration of Xylaria's peace, Ethan walked with Lysera through the gardens once more. The air was filled with the soft hum of energy flows and the glow of luminous plants. You have changed my world, Lysera said softly. Not just the empire, but my perspective. Humans, they are remarkable. And you, Ethan, have shown that even a single human can make a profound difference. Ethan looked at her, his heart steady but full. I only did what I could. Humans survive by thinking, by adapting, by acting when necessary. I am glad it helped you and your people. Lysera smiled, her eyes glowing softly. It did more than help. It inspired, and it brought us together in ways that no one could have predicted. Ethan hesitated, then spoke honestly. Lysera, I did not expect any of this, but I feel like I belong here now. With you, with this empire, and I want to continue helping in any way I can. The Queen studied him for a moment, then placed her hand gently on his. Ethan, what began as an accident has become a choice I am glad we share. Ethan felt a quiet happiness. The fear and uncertainty that had haunted him since the ritual were gone. He had found a purpose, a place, and even a bond that mattered. Humans had survived here, adapted to the alien world, and made a difference. The celebration that night was grand. The palace glowed with light, music filled the air, and Xylarian citizens cheered for their queen and her new consort. Ethan moved through the crowd not as a visitor but as part of the empire. The council, once wary, now treated him with respect. Even those who had doubted him could not deny his contributions. As the festivities continued, Ethan found a quiet moment with Lysera, looking out over the floating city. The twin suns had set, and stars sparkled in the alien sky. "You've adapted well," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "Humans are unpredictable yet effective." Ethan laughed lightly. "I suppose so. And I have learned that even when things seem impossible, humans find a way." Lysera nodded. "Indeed. And now together, we can face whatever challenges the galaxy may bring." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment he had never known. What had started as an accidental ritual, a confusing and frightening ceremony, had become a journey of growth, trust, and unexpected connection. He was no longer just Ethan Cole, human engineer. He was a partner, a protector, and a part of something far greater than he had ever imagined. As the night deepened, Ethan and Lysera walked side by side through the glowing gardens, silent but connected. The Empire was safe for now. The Council had been won over and the people had hope. And for Ethan, a new chapter had begun, not as a visitor, not as a pawn, but as someone who had proven that even a human could make a difference among the stars. For the first time since arriving on Xylaria, Ethan felt at home. He looked up at the alien sky, glittering with distant stars, and realized that the universe was full of possibilities. Humans adapted, humans survived, and humans, like him, could shape the destiny of worlds. And somewhere in the palace, Queen Lysera's eyes glowed softly, watching him with quiet admiration and curiosity, knowing that the human at her side had already changed her world, and would continue to do so in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Ethan smiled. His journey had taken an unexpected turn, but it had led him to a place of purpose, respect, and connection. The accidental marriage had become a new beginning, not just for him but for the empire he now called home. And the stars beyond promised adventures yet to come.